Hello. Hi. So my name's Natalie Campbell-Reid. I'm a marketing manager for Explori, and Explori are an event research agency. So I'm here today to talk to you about how to measure the impact of your event with technology. But before we delve in, I'm just going to tell you a bit more about myself. So this was actually taken at a technology event where I was practicing presentation skills, so we'll see how this goes. I actually started my career as an event marketer at a FTSE 500 company. I then went on to work as an in-house event organizer for a technology brand. And that experience really came full circle when I joined Explori. So at Explori, I kind of sit behind your visitor data. I get to understand how attendees feel and what they want to gain from events. So as we're going through, I'm actually going to be pulling a lot from this playbook, which we've recently created and which is launching tomorrow. And there's a lot in here that I really wanted to include in this presentation, but I had to really strip it out so we could keep it to time. But I will tell you at the end how you can get your hands on this. So, highlights for today, we're going to be talking about setting your impact objectives, what that actually means and how we've conceptualized that at Explori. Finding the right technology. So I'm hoping this will provide a useful framework for you as you go around the event today, if you're looking for different technologies, to think about what kind of data each of those are providing for you. And I'll be tying that all together by talking about how we bridge the gap between simply measuring for measurement's sake and actually demonstrating impact within our organizations. So it would be unthinkable for me to stand here and not present you any data. So I wanted to share with you some research we did for the in-house corporate events community earlier this year. And what we really wanted to find out was some of the key challenges that they're facing over the next 3 years that they're looking to tackle. So we asked the question in a feedback survey and found that the top 2 challenges are using metrics to effectively measure event performance and also using technology to enhance the way your teams are working. So you're in the right place. That's a good sign. We also wanted to know, well, what metrics? When we talk about measurement, often we can be quite vague. So what metrics are we actually looking at? And this is what we found. As you can see down this end, there's a big interest in impact of the event on future behavior. And you've got things like being able to benchmark and understanding dwell time. And we wanted to take this a step further and find out how people are currently using these. As you can see, usage is much lower than we'd probably like. We've got a high interest in things like understanding the impact of behavior, but it's not well measured. And really at Explori, we're trying to bridge this gap between here. So we've got 80% measuring impact instead of only 20. So for the sake of this presentation, I'm really going to be focusing on these impact metrics and how you can really get to understand what the impact of your event is on brand awareness, on sales, on leads, on future behavior in your companies. So that's where we get to setting your objectives. Because any good measurement system is based on having the right objectives in place. And when we were thinking about how we would visualize this for event organizers, as event organizers ourselves, we came up with what we call the event impact tree. And the reason we thought of this as a tree is it could have been a linear diagram, but really, we understood that your company goal needs to be the first thing you're thinking about. So what is it that your event is attributed to? What is it trying to achieve for your company? And that could be something like increasing sales referrals by 30% in the next 12 months. So that's your end goal. It's the fruit of your tree. But these 3, so you're looking at your cognitive, your emotional, sentimental, and your behavioral, these are event-specific objectives. So your cognitive goals, what are the changes in knowledge and understanding that need to happen in order to achieve this company goal? And then your sentiment or your emotional goal is your event creating the right sentiment to reach your goal. So do attendees leave feeling like your brand aligns with their values? Do they leave feeling like you offer the best product or service on the market? And the behavioral goal. And this is really crucial for event organizers, because as I said with the company goal, it can actually be quite far off in the distance and a hard thing for you to measure. And sometimes you don't even have access to that data. But as an event organizer, if you set a behavioral goal, this is something you can measure a week after your event and understand the impact it's having. So it's a measurement of intention. So you might want to measure your attendees' intention to purchase, intention to remain an employee, intention to recommend after your event. So we've gone through your impact objectives, but probably the thing that you're all here for is how do you find the right technology, the technology you need. And I've split this up into 3 different areas. So we're going to talk about demographic data, we're going to talk about engagement data, and sentiment data. So this all relates to your attendee-facing technology. So your demographic data is really looking at who your attendees are. So it's capturing information such as name, job title, seniority, company. You might want to know if they're ex-customers, how many of your events they've attended, those kind of things. And this is typically captured through a registration form, or it might be in your CRM system already. And the crucial thing to know about your demographic data, it's so important for, it's the string between all your different feedback tools. So when we come on to talk about your engagement data and your sentiment data, your demographic data is what really ties that together. It's understanding, okay, this person did this at my event and this is how they felt. Yeah? So for engagement data, we're talking about what did your attendee do at their event and when did they do it. So I'm going to give you a few examples from things around the show, and you guys may have already seen some of these if you've been around to the stands. Touch points, they're a good way for you to collect resources from exhibitors, but also the organizer can see what you've interacted with and when. So it can be used as a form of tracking around the event. But if you want to get even more in depth with that, you could use an attendee tracking tool, which is usually embedded in the event app. And this will tell you the exact movement of attendees around your event. And then you've got matchmaking. So some of you may have been actually recommended this session through the event app, or you've been recommended people that you should meet with. But these are kind of things that you can, the kind of data you can gather to understand your attendees' interest areas. So for example, if you swiped yes to someone to meet today, let's say you're interested in someone in that particular role. And in-session polling. So these are all the different things you can gather in terms of engagement data at your event. And there's many others that you'll probably find as you walk around the show as well. But what I want to kind of highlight here is that we've talked about who your attendees are, and we've talked about what they did. But the crucial part that's missing, and something that I think is really important that we don't often gather, is why. And that's really where your sentiment data comes in. And I have to take a moment here to say, of course, I would say this is important because I work for Explori. Explori do surveys, and sentiment data to us is really important. But I will say to that, when Explori was founded almost a decade ago, we weren't a survey-first business. So our CEO saw that there was a problem for event organizers when it came to data, when it came to being able to measure the impact of your events. And he went out and looked for a tool that solved that problem. And that's how we ended up as a survey platform. But I do want to take a chance to also bust some myths. Some myths I had as an event marketer around surveys as well. So I'm going to start with one, and I'm going to ask for a bit of audience participation here. Does anyone feel this way? Only people who absolutely hate or love your event will respond to your survey. I know I did. Yeah, okay. So what we did is, at Explori, we have over 3 million responses in our database, survey responses. So we took a sample of that database and we were like, you know, let's put our money where our mouth is. Is this actually true? So we took a sample and looked at the Net Promoter Score. And the Net Promoter Score is a measure of advocacy. So it asks the question, how likely are you to recommend this event to a colleague or a friend? And respondents rate their likelihood to recommend on a scale of 0 to 10. And we found that 10% lie here as a rating of 0 to 4. So these are your die-hard haters, basically. And then we've got, up this end, 42%. So these are your absolute #1 fans of your event. They love it to bits. They shout about it all the time. But we actually found that the biggest segment was this middle part, so your passives. And this is the part that we're always concerned that surveys are missing out on, but we actually found it's the largest part of the data set. So hopefully, for those of you who feel this way, I might have helped persuade you otherwise. Myth 2 is people are tired of doing surveys, so they don't respond. Does anyone else feel that way? Yeah, I see a little. So I think response rates is definitely something that people always think of when it comes to surveys. And what I would say is that as event organisers, we are in a really favourable position in that we've all taken time out of our busy schedules to be here. You know, there's other meetings we could have been in, there's deadlines we have. I know I have one tomorrow, but I'll still be here. So we're in a favourable position that people want our events to be valuable. So they're actually primed to give feedback, but we do have to make that easy for them. So things that I would suggest, if this is a concern of yours, there are things you can do like market your surveys. And I would say that because I'm a marketer. But it's so crucial to tell your attendees that you will be collecting feedback. Also how important it is, and in your marketing campaign, share with them how you've improved the event on the last one using their feedback. Also focus on the user experience of your surveys. So here I'm talking about, we talked about engagement data earlier, where if you're gathering attendee tracking information, you know where your attendees have been at your event. You can pipe that into your survey and said, how was your time at the expo and engage stage? No? Because you already have that information, so you're not asking them where were you in the show. And last but the most important, don't delay. And this is something we see organisers do a lot, which is leaving your survey till weeks after your event. We normally recommend 2 to 3 working days afterwards. So have it ready before your event, and then any tweaks you need to make when you get back to the office, you can do that and send that out. But if you send out your survey late, it can really cannibalize your response rates. And this is the last myth. Survey data isn't strategic. Anybody feel this way? Oh, that's positive. Okay, cool. So the only thing I would say with this is that surveys are as strategic as you make them, essentially. So what we tend to do is measure a lot of environmental factors, and by that I mean it's how was the venue, did you like the food and beverage, was the speaker good, was the session good? But what we really need to get to is asking questions about the impact, that relate to the impact and our impact objectives. And I'm going to give you a worked example of this. So let's imagine we are an events team, probably the biggest events team I've ever seen, but we are one. And we work for a well-known beauty brand with a large field sales force who typically work in isolation. And the problem our company has is that the employment market is really competitive and we want to hold on to our best salespeople. So we've been asked to organise this employee recognition event, and it's a good opportunity for colleagues to build connections with others. So we're here at the Expo Engage stage, and we're putting together our impact tree, and this is what we come up with. We know that the company goal is to have a 4% increase in sales staff retention, which is measured via the HR management tool. That's great. We might not be able to access that data, but it's good to know that's what our event is driving for. Our behavioural goal, so this is where we're looking at intention, is we want a 10% increase in the number of attendees who intend to remain an employee for the next 12 months. Our sentiment goal, so how we want our attendees to feel, is we want 30% more attendees to feel like their contribution is valued. We want them to feel part of a network and feel motivated to achieve their goals. And the cognitive goal is 35% of attendees to understand what constitutes sales excellence and have identified goals and mentors. So we've got a lot to achieve with this event. And how you would go about measuring that in your survey looks something like this. So your first question could be, do you intend to remain an employee at Pineapple Inc. or company name for the next 12 months? Yes, no, maybe. There you've got your behavioral question that you can measure. Also, how much do you agree with the following statements? So, how much do they agree that they feel like their contributions to the company are valued, or feel part of a network, or feel motivated to achieve their goals after the event? And then you've got your cognitive questions. So which of the following are necessary to demonstrate sales excellence? And we could have said that, there's two of these that we particularly want to communicate in this event. So after the event, once we've collected our feedback analysis, we could say, oh, okay, so did they get that? Did they understand that? Were we able to communicate that effectively? And did you identify a mentor at the event? Now, we've talked about setting your impact objective. So we've talked about what that would look like in a company. And we've also talked about collecting your demographic and your engagement data to understand who your attendees are, what they did, when they did it. And what I really wanted to stress is that as we're moving to a place of trying to measure the impact of our events on the company, really your sentiment data is the bridge that gets you there. So ramping up the number of impact questions you put in your survey is really going to help you go back to the company and say, this is the impact that my events have on the company. And I wasn't able to go into any further detail in terms of benchmarking, which I would have loved to share with you, but it is all in the playbook, and you can get a copy of it by my colleague Alex at the back with the white shirt. He will scan your badge and we can send you a copy of this, as well as give you access to our Global Visitor Insights report, which was a huge piece of research we did on 13,000 visitors to trade shows. Oh, I did what I wasn't meant to do and press the black button. So thank you so much for listening. And if you have any questions, oh yeah, what is the best way of incentivizing delegates to complete surveys? Now, we typically would say the don't delay thing is a big thing. So send it out as fast as you can. If you would like to incentivize responses, if you would like to offer something, we would say don't go for the kind of ubiquitous tech prizes, but make it really relevant and special to your event. So, for example, if you've got a major keynote speaker, you might want to offer a signed copy of their latest book or something like that, but something that's actually relevant to what your event is about. Hope I've answered that. What systems do you integrate with? The list is exhaustive, so I can't actually... we'd have to know which systems you want to integrate, want to integrate Explori with. So, I mean, we're on the stand 2102 around the back, or Mitch here is from Explori, Alex here at the back is also from Explori, so they can answer that question for you as well. How does your solution beat something like SurveyMonkey? Great question. Well, when Explori was founded almost a decade ago, we were built specifically for the live event industry. So though it's a survey platform, our main focus is really on the research. It's really on the back-end analytics. So we were built to be able to help organizers prove the impact of their events, whereas more generic survey platforms don't have that focus for the live events market. So that's where we've really found our niche. Do you find surveys little and often always work better than a big survey at the end? In answer to that, I would say no, but also it depends. So for example, with your speaker sessions, you're better off asking in the event. So afterwards, it would be best to say, how would you rate Natalie's talk on a scale of 1 to 10, or is there any other comments you'd like to give? Because after the event, especially if you've had a long day of going to sessions, it's likely that you're not going to really remember or be able to rate effectively. So in that case, I would say yes. But the benefit of doing post-event surveys is really you get your attendee to step back and look at the event as a whole. And that's really what you want. If you're doing it during the event, you're only capturing small snapshots. If they've just been in a really long queue for food and catering, they're not going to feel the best about your event at that time. But maybe 2 days afterwards, they can step back and they can say, well, actually, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed this. Overall, I felt really good about this. So that's my answer to that question. Do we have a stand at the event? Yes. We are just through these double doors on the left-hand side. So you can find us there, but also we're in this crowd as well, so you can just come and ask us questions here, since you're here. And last, oh yeah, so we've kind of covered that question already earlier. Is that all? If that's all, then I guess that's the end. And thank you guys, and come see us at the stand.